My sister destroyed my architecture thesis for fun. Dad laughed at my tears. 10 years later, I bought the house they lost to her debts. I came home from the library at midnight to find my thesis project scattered across the living room like confetti after a parade nobody wanted. 3 months of architectural models, hand-drafted blueprints, and research portfolios reduced to shredded paper and snapped balsa wood. My sister Melissa sat on the couch eating ice cream, watching a reality show with the volume turned up high enough to rattle the windows. "What did you do?" My voice cracked. The model of the sustainable housing development I designed for my final project looked like someone had taken a hammer to it. Weeks of precision work destroyed in what must have been minutes. She glanced over, spoon halfway to her mouth. "Relax, it's just school stuff. Build another one. This is due in 4 days." 4 days, Melissa. So dramatic. She rolled her eyes and turned back to the television. "It's not like you're curing cancer, Tyler. It's just little houses made of sticks." I heard footsteps on the stairs. Dad appeared in his bathrobe, squinting at the mess. I waited for him to say something, to demand an explanation from Melissa, to show even a flicker of concern. Instead, he looked at my face, saw the tears I couldn't hold back, and started laughing. "Come on, son. They're just models. Your sister was probably bored." He walked to the kitchen and opened the refrigerator. "You've got time to fix it. Stop being so sensitive. I have a presentation in front of the entire architecture faculty." My hands were shaking. This was everything. "Then I guess you'd better get started." He pulled out a beer and walked back upstairs without another glance at the destruction. Melissa smirked at me over her shoulder. "Daddy's right. Stop being such a baby." I stayed up for 72 hours straight. My roommate at the dorms, Marcus, helped me raid every craft store within 20 miles. We rebuilt what we could, but the detail work was gone. The research portfolio I'd printed at the specialty shop downtown had cost me $200 I didn't have. Melissa had torn every page in half. I stapled them back together and reprinted what I could afford, leaving gaps where my budget ran out. The presentation went poorly. Professor Hamilton kept asking about the missing sections, the rough edges on the model, the incomplete cost analysis I hadn't had time to redo. I passed, barely, with a grade that knocked my GPA down just enough to lose the graduate assistantship I'd been counting on. The funding I needed to continue my education disappeared because I got a B- instead of an A. When I confronted Dad about it later, he was washing his car in the driveway. Melissa sat on the porch rail filing her nails. "You need to talk to her," I said. "She cost me my assistantship. Do you understand what that means?" He sprayed the hood and wiped it down with slow, deliberate movements. "You're 22 years old, Tyler. Maybe it's time you learned the world doesn't stop just because you have a school project. Your sister made a mistake. People make mistakes. She did it on purpose. She told me she was bored. She's young. She doesn't think before she acts." He moved to the other side of the car. "You want me to punish her? Ground her? She's 19. She's basically an adult. She's a child who destroys other people's things for entertainment." Melissa laughed from the porch. "Maybe if your little houses were more interesting, I wouldn't have been so bored." Dad chuckled. Actually chuckled. "She's got a point. Architecture stuff is pretty dry." That was the moment something fundamental shifted in my chest. Not anger exactly, though there was plenty of that. More like a door closing, the lock clicking into place. I looked at my father, at my sister, at the house I'd grown up in, and realized I was completely alone here. Whatever family meant to other people, it didn't mean that to us. I moved out the next week. Found a studio apartment above a Chinese restaurant where the smell of garlic and ginger seeped through the floorboards. Took out loans to cover the graduate program I'd lost funding for, plus the rent, plus food. Worked 2 jobs while carrying a full course load. Stopped going home for holidays. Mom called sometimes. She'd left when I was 14, moved to Oregon with a man named Dale who worked in timber. The divorce had been ugly, and Dad got the house plus custody because Mom didn't fight him. She'd been dealing with depression that made every day feel like moving through wet concrete, and Dad's lawyer had painted her as unstable. Looking back, I understood why she ran. I just wished she'd taken me with her. "Your father says you're not coming for Thanksgiving," she said during one call. "I'm working." "Both jobs?" "I need the money, Mom." She sighed, that particular exhale that meant she wanted to say more but wouldn't. "How's school going?" "Fine." I didn't tell her about the loans piling up, the assistantship I'd lost, the thesis project that still haunted me. What would be the point? She had her own life now, her own struggles. "How's Oregon?" "Rainy." A pause. "I'm sorry I'm not there, Tyler." "I know." We talked for a few more minutes about nothing important, then said goodbye. After hanging up, I sat in my tiny apartment listening to the sounds of the restaurant below preparing for dinner service and wondered if this was what being an adult felt like. Untethered. Floating. Alone by necessity rather than choice. Graduate school was brutal. Studio classes that ran until 3 in the morning, critiques that left you questioning every decision you'd ever made, competitions for internships that felt more like gladiatorial combat than professional development. I threw myself into it with the single-minded focus of someone who had nothing else to fall back on. My classmates had family money, safety nets, parents who could wire them cash when things got tight. I had student loans and spite. Spite, as it turned out, was excellent fuel. I landed an internship with Morrison & Associates, a mid-sized firm that specialized in commercial development. The pay was barely enough to cover rent, but the experience was invaluable. I learned how buildings actually got made, how to navigate city planning boards, how to read the political currents that determined which projects got approved and which died in committee. I watched senior architects schmooze clients, negotiate contracts, turn abstract concepts into concrete reality. Philip Morrison himself took an interest in my work. He was in his 60s, silver-haired and sharp-eyed, with the kind of presence that made people stand up straighter when he entered a room. During my second month there, he stopped by my desk to look at a rendering I'd been working on. "You do this?" He tapped the screen where I designed a mixed-use development for a theoretical site downtown. "Yes, sir. Just practice. Working through some concepts." He studied it for a long moment. "The retail integration is smart. Most people your age forget that street-level experience matters. They get caught up in the naughty stuff up top and leave dead zones at ground level." My thesis project was about sustainable urban housing. How to make density livable. "The one you barely passed?" He raised an eyebrow. "I make it my business to know who I'm hiring. Your professor said the presentation was a mess, but the concept was solid." My face went hot. Family emergency. Couldn't be helped. Family emergencies rarely can. He straightened up. "Keep working on this. Show me where it goes." That conversation changed everything. Philip became a mentor in the way I'd always imagined fathers were supposed to be. He challenged me, pushed me, but he also protected me from the office politics that could derail a young career. When a senior associate tried to take credit for one of my designs, Philip shut it down in a meeting with language so precise and cutting that I barely recognized it as an insult until later. "This profession is full of people who will take from you," he told me afterward. "You need to learn when to fight back and when to document everything and wait for the right moment." I graduated with my master's in architecture and stayed on at Morrison & Associates full-time. The student loans were astronomical, but I had a real salary now, health insurance, a path forward. I got a better apartment, one with windows that didn't face a brick wall. Started building a life that felt like mine. Dad called once during this period, about a year after I'd moved out. "Your sister's getting married. Thought you'd want to know." "Okay. Wedding's in June. She'd like you to be there." I almost laughed. "I'm sure she would." "Tyler, she's your sister. This is family. Family is supposed to care about each other, Dad. Family is supposed to protect each other." "What are you talking about? We're your family. You're acting like we did something terrible to you." "You laughed when I cried. You told me to stop being sensitive when Melissa destroyed 3 months of work that cost me thousands of dollars and lost funding. You chose her entertainment over my future." Silence on the line. "Then, you're still mad about that? That was years ago. You need to let things go. Tell Melissa I hope she has a great wedding." I hung up. He didn't call back. The years blurred together in the way they do when you're building something. I made senior associate at 30, worked on projects that actually got built, saw my designs become part of the city's landscape. Started dating a woman named Rachel who taught high school English and laughed at my terrible jokes. We moved in together after a year, got a dog named Brutus who was mostly lab and partly couch cushion. Life felt stable in a way it never had before. Then one afternoon, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. Local area code. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Tyler? It's Melissa." I hadn't heard her voice in 7 years. It sounded different, older, with an edge of something I couldn't quite identify. Stress maybe. Desperation. "What do you want?" "I need help." The words came out fast, tumbling over each other. "I'm in trouble. Real trouble. And I didn't know who else to call." "Call Dad." "I can't. He can't know. Please, Tyler. I know I messed up before, but this is serious." Every instinct I had screamed at me to hang up. But curiosity got the better of me. "What kind of trouble? Can we meet? I can't talk about this over the phone. I'm not giving you money. I'm not asking for money. I just need advice. Please. 1 hour of your time." Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet her at a coffee shop near my office. Rachel thought I was crazy. "She destroyed your thesis. Your dad laughed at you. Why would you give her even a minute of your time?" "I don't know," I admitted. "Maybe I need to see what 7 years did to her. Maybe I'm just curious about what could possibly be so bad that she'd call me." The coffee shop was crowded with the post-lunch rush. I spotted Melissa in a corner booth, hunched over her phone. She looked different. Thinner. Lines around her eyes that hadn't been there before. Her clothes were nice but worn, designer labels that had seen too many dry cleaning cycles. She stood when she saw me, attempted a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Tyler. Thank you for coming." I sat down without ordering anything. "You have 45 minutes. Talk." The story came out in pieces. Melissa had married Connor, her college boyfriend, right after graduation. He'd worked in finance, made good money, and they'd lived well. Too well, apparently. Connor had a gambling problem he'd hidden from everyone, including his wife. Online poker, sports betting, trips to Atlantic City that he'd claimed were work conferences. By the time Melissa found out, they were $300,000 in debt. "He mortgaged the house without telling me," she said, stirring a coffee she hadn't touched. "Forged my signature on the paperwork. Then he lost it all and left. Just disappeared one day while I was at work. Cleaned out the joint account and vanished. File a police report. Sue him." I did. All of that. But the debt is real, and my name's on it too. The bank doesn't care that he forged documents. They want their money. She looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. "They're foreclosing on the house." "Dad's house?" That caught my attention. "What does Dad's house have to do with your debt?" "Connor convinced Dad to co-sign on a loan. Told him we needed it to start a business. Dad put the house up as collateral." I sat back in the booth, processing this information. "When?" 3 years ago. I didn't know. Connor handled everything. Dad thought he was helping us get started. And now the bank is coming after Dad's house because Connor's loan defaulted." She nodded, tears spilling over. "He's going to lose everything. The house he's lived in for 30 years. And it's my fault for marrying Connor, for not paying attention, for trusting him. Part of me, a large part, thought this was exactly what they deserved. Poetic justice served cold and with interest. Dad had laughed at my tears, dismissed my pain, chosen Melissa's whims over my future. Now she was crying to me about consequences she couldn't escape. But another part, smaller and quieter, remembered being 15 and teaching Melissa how to ride a bike after Dad got frustrated and went inside. Remembered her laugh when she finally got it, the gap-toothed grin she'd given me before pedaling away down the street. "What do you want from me?" I asked. "I don't know. You're successful. You understand complicated things. I thought maybe you could help me figure out a way to save the house. Or at least talk to Dad, help him understand it's not his fault. Melissa, I'm an architect, not a financial advisor. And Dad made his choice when he co-signed without doing his due diligence. Please." She reached across the table like she might grab my hand, then thought better of it. "I know I don't deserve your help. I know what I did to your thesis was horrible. But Dad doesn't deserve this. He's 65 years old. Where is he supposed to go?" I looked at her for a long moment, this woman who used to be my sister, and felt nothing but a hollow sort of pity. "I'll think about it. No promises." Her face lit up with hope that made me feel worse. "Thank you. Thank you so much, Tyler." I left the coffee shop and walked back to my office in a daze. Rachel was right. I was crazy for even meeting with her. But now that I knew the situation, I couldn't quite let it go. The house Dad was losing was the house I'd grown up in. The house where Mom had planted roses along the fence before she left. The house where I'd spent countless hours in the attic drawing floor plans in my notebooks, dreaming about what I'd build someday. That evening, I did something I rarely allowed myself to do. I drove to the old neighborhood and parked across the street from the house. It looked smaller than I remembered, shabby in a way it hadn't been when I was young. The paint was peeling around the windows. The lawn needed work. Dad's truck sat in the driveway, older than dirt and still running through sheer stubbornness. I sat there for 20 minutes, watching the lights go on inside as the sun set, and tried to figure out what I was feeling. Satisfaction that Dad was finally facing consequences? Sadness that the house was in jeopardy? Anger that Melissa had the audacity to ask me for help? All of it, maybe. Or none of it. Emotions are messy that way. My phone buzzed with a text from Rachel. "Dinner's ready. Where are you?" I drove home without answering the question I'd come to ask myself. Over the next week, I made some calls. Talked to a real estate attorney I'd worked with on commercial projects. Reviewed the foreclosure timeline Melissa had emailed me after our meeting. The situation was worse than she'd described. The loan Connor had taken out was massive, secured against both the house Connor and Melissa had owned plus Dad's property. Connor had defaulted on everything, and the bank was moving fast to recoup their losses. Dad's house would go to auction in 60 days. "You could buy it," Rachel said over dinner one night. "You've got the savings. The market in that neighborhood is depressed. You could probably get it for half what the bank is owed. Why would I want that house?" She gave me a look that said she could see right through me. "Because it's your childhood home. Because part of you wants to save it. Because you're not as cold as you pretend to be. I'm not cold. I'm practical. There's a difference. Aha. She sipped her wine. So you're not going to buy it? I didn't answer because I didn't know. The idea had been circling in my head since my conversation with the attorney, landing and taking off again like a bird that couldn't decide where to perch. Buying the house would be both mercy and revenge. I'd save Dad from homelessness while also becoming his landlord, the ultimate power reversal. But was that what I wanted? To hold his security in my hands the way he'd once held mine and found it worthless? The question kept me up at night. 2 weeks before the auction, I got another call from Melissa. Dad knows I talk to you. He wants to see you. No. Tyler, please. He's asking. Actually asking. That's huge for him. I'm aware of how rare it is for him to acknowledge my existence. Just come to dinner. One meal. Hear him out. I agreed, though I couldn't have explained why even to myself. Maybe I needed to see him broken. Maybe I needed closure. Maybe I was just tired of carrying all this weight around and thought confronting it might lighten the load. The dinner was painful from the moment I walked through the door. Dad looked older, grayer, diminished in a way that caught me off guard. He'd always seemed larger than life, immovable, and now he looked like what he was, a man in his mid-60s facing the loss of everything he'd built. Melissa had cooked, or attempted to. The chicken was dry, the vegetables overcooked, but we all pretended it was fine. We made small talk about weather and traffic, dancing around the reason I was there until Dad finally pushed his plate away and looked at me directly. Melissa says you're doing well. Architecture firm, good salary, nice apartment. I am. I'm glad. You always were smart about that stuff. Building things, designing things. The compliment sat awkwardly between us, too little and too late. I waited. I guess you know about the house situation, he continued. It's a mess. I made a bad call trusting Connor. Should have known better. You should have done your due diligence before co-signing a loan that size. His jaw tightened. I was trying to help my daughter and son-in-law start a business. What was I supposed to do? Treat them like strangers? You were supposed to treat them like adults who needed to prove they could manage their finances before you put your house on the line. Melissa jumped in before Dad could respond. Tyler's right. It was our responsibility, not yours. But we're trying to figure out how to fix it now. I looked at her, then at Dad, and felt that same hollow pity I'd felt in the coffee shop. They were desperate, backed into a corner, and they'd called me because I was the only person they could think of who might have the resources to help. Not because they valued me or cared about me, but because I was useful. The irony wasn't lost on me. What exactly do you want from me? I asked. Dad straightened his shoulders, trying to muster some of his old authority. A loan. Just until I can figure things out. I'll pay you back. With interest if you want. But I need enough to catch up on the payments and stop the foreclosure. How much? $90,000 to bring everything current. Maybe $100,000 to cover legal fees. I laughed, short and sharp. You want me to loan you $100,000? Your family. This is what family does. The words hung in the air between us, heavy with implication and history. Family. The concept he'd wielded like a weapon when it suited him and ignored when it didn't. Where was family when Melissa destroyed my thesis? I kept my voice level, almost conversational. When you laughed at me for crying about it. When I lost my graduate assistantship and had to take out an extra $40,000 in loans because of her entertainment. Dad's face reddened. That was different. That was school. This is the house. This was my future. My career. The difference is you only care now because it affects you. Tyler, come on, Melissa said quietly. We know we messed up. We know we should have taken it more seriously. But that was 10 years ago. Are you really going to hold it against us forever? I'm not holding anything against anyone. I'm just not going to pretend we're a close family when you only call me when you need something. Dad stood up, his chair scraping against the floor. Fine. You want to be petty? Go ahead. But don't come crying to us when you need something someday. Family works both ways. It does, I agreed. That's exactly my point. I left before the situation could escalate further. Melissa followed me out to my car, talking fast about how Dad was just stressed and didn't mean it, how she'd work on him, how maybe we could all get together again and talk it through. I let her speak, got in my car, and drove away without promising anything. Rachel was waiting up when I got home. I told her everything, the dinner, the request, my father's anger when I refused. She listened without interrupting, then said, "What are you going to do?" "I don't know." But that was a lie. Some part of me had known since the moment Melissa first called what I was going to do. I'd just been waiting to admit it to myself. The auction was scheduled for a Thursday morning at 10. I took the day off work, told Philip the first had personal business to handle. He gave me a knowing look but didn't pry. After 7 years, he'd learned to read my silences. The county courthouse was full of people like me, investors, house flippers, attorneys representing clients who wanted distressed properties. Dad wasn't there. Neither was Melissa. They'd probably been advised not to come, that watching their house get sold to strangers would be too painful. They were right. The bidding started at $200,000, below market value but reflecting the property's condition and the neighborhood's decline. A few hands went up, cautious, testing the waters. I waited. Let them drive the price up, let them think they might actually win. When we hit 240, most of the room dropped out. Only 2 bidders left, me and a man in a cheap suit who looked like he ran a dozen rental properties and treated them all terribly. I raised my paddle. 250. Cheap suit countered. 260. 300. The room went quiet. 300 was over market for this property, and everyone knew it. Cheap suit shook his head and sat down. The auctioneer looked around for other bidders, found none, and brought the gavel down. Sold for $300,000 to bidder 47. Just like that, I own my childhood home. The paperwork took 3 weeks to finalize. During that time, I didn't contact Dad or Melissa. Let them wonder what would happen, who had bought the house, whether they'd be evicted immediately or given time to find somewhere else to go. The attorney handling my purchase advised me to stay silent until the sale was complete and I had the deed in hand. These situations can get emotional, he said. Better to have all your legal ducks in a row before you reveal yourself as the buyer. Smart advice. I followed it. The deed arrived on a Wednesday afternoon, delivered to my office by courier. Philip saw the envelope and raised an eyebrow. That what I think it is? Probably. Your childhood home? I nodded. He'd figured it out weeks ago, probably the day I'd asked him for the attorney referral. Philip was sharp that way, always 3 steps ahead. What are you going to do with it? He asked. Haven't decided yet. Liar. But he smiled when he said it. Just remember, revenge is a dish best served with a clear conscience. Make sure you can live with whatever you choose. That evening, I drove to the house for the second time in a decade. Dad's truck was in the driveway. Lights on inside. I sat in my car for a few minutes, the deed on the passenger seat, and tried to imagine how this conversation would go. There was no good way to do it. No script that made this moment anything other than what it was, me holding power over the man who taught me that power was the only thing that mattered. I grabbed the deed and walked to the front door. Knocked 3 times. Footsteps inside, then the door opened. Dad stood there in a stained undershirt and sweatpants, looking confused. Tyler? What are you doing here? Can I come in? He hesitated, then stepped back. Yeah. Sure. Melissa's not here. She's at work. The house looked worse inside than it had from the street. Furniture worn down to the springs, stains on the carpet, dishes piled in the sink. The smell of old coffee and something sour I couldn't identify. This was what happened when you stopped caring about maintenance, when depression or despair took over and made every small task feel insurmountable. We stood in the living room, the same room where my thesis had been destroyed. I wondered if Dad remembered that night, if he ever thought about it. I bought the house, I said. No preamble. Just the facts. His face went through several expressions: confusion, disbelief, shock, and finally something close to hope. You what? At the auction. 3 weeks ago. I bought it. I own it now. He sank onto the couch like his legs wouldn't hold him anymore. Why? Because I could. Because I wanted to. Are you going to kick us out? I looked around the room, at the water stain on the ceiling that had been there since I was 12, at the scratches on the hardwood floor where we'd pushed furniture around during the divorce. Every inch of this place held memories, good and bad, woven together so tightly I couldn't separate them. I should, I said. You'd probably deserve it. But no. You can stay. His head snapped up. What's the catch? Rent. Market rate. $1,200 a month. First and last month up front, then the first of every month after that. You're late, you're out. You damage the property beyond normal wear, you're out. You cause problems with the neighbors, you're out. Standard lease terms. $1,200? His voice cracked. Tyler, I can't afford that on my pension. Then get a roommate. Or find somewhere cheaper. Those are your options. He looked at me with something between hatred and desperation. You're really going to charge your own father rent to live in his house? My house, I corrected. That's the point. It's not your house anymore. It's mine. You lost it when you co-signed a fraudulent loan without doing basic research. You lost it when you chose to protect Melissa's feelings over my future. You lost it when you laughed at my tears and told me to stop being sensitive. This is just the paperwork catching up to reality. That's what this is about? The thesis thing? You're still mad about that? I'm not mad. I'm done. There's a difference. I pulled a lease agreement from my jacket pocket and dropped it on the coffee table. Read it. Sign it. First payment due in 30 days. If you don't want these terms, fine. Move out by the end of the month and I'll rent it to someone else. I walked to the door, then turned back. Dad sat on the couch staring at the lease like it was written in a foreign language. He looked old and broken, and I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no vindication, just a hollow sense of completion. One more thing, I said. Melissa can't live here. I'll rent to you, but not to her. She wants to reconcile or apologize or whatever, she can do it somewhere else. Not in my house. She's my daughter. And I'm your son. Funny how you only remember that when you need something. I left him there with the lease and drove home to Rachel, who was making dinner in our kitchen with Brutus underfoot hoping for dropped food. She looked up when I came in, took one look at my face, and put down the knife she'd been using to chop vegetables. How'd it go? I did it. Gave him a lease. $1,200 a month. She pulled me into a hug, and I let myself lean into her warmth, her steadiness. How do you feel? I don't know yet. Ask me in a year. Update 1. The first rent check arrived on time, delivered to my office by mail with no note attached. Just a check signed in Dad's shaky handwriting. I deposited it without ceremony and moved on with my life. Melissa called a week later, furious. You're charging Dad rent? You bought his house and turned into a landlord? What is wrong with you? I'm providing him with stable housing at a fair rate. What's wrong with that? You know he can barely afford it. You know he's struggling. Then maybe he shouldn't have co-signed a 6-figure loan for a son-in-law he barely knew without doing his due diligence. Actions have consequences, Melissa. You of all people should understand that. So you're punishing him for my mistake? I'm not punishing anyone. I'm running a rental property according to standard business practices. If Dad doesn't like the arrangement, he's free to move. She was crying now, angry tears that came through in her voice. Why are you being like this? We're family. Are we? Because from where I'm standing, family is supposed to protect each other. Family is supposed to care when someone's hurting. You destroyed 3 months of my work for fun and Dad laughed about it. Now you're upset because I'm treating you both with the same indifference you showed me. Seems fair. It was 10 years ago, Tyler. When are you going to let it go? I did let it go. That's why you're calling me instead of watching Dad become homeless. If I hadn't let it go, I wouldn't have bought the house at all. I would have let it go to someone who'd evict him immediately and flip it for profit. You're welcome. I hung up before she could respond. Rachel, who'd been listening from the kitchen doorway, gave me a concerned look. You okay? Yeah. And surprisingly, I was. Melissa's tears didn't move me the way they might have once. Maybe that made me cold. Maybe it made me healthy. I hadn't figured out which yet. The months passed. Dad paid his rent on time, probably because he knew I'd follow through on eviction if he didn't. We didn't speak beyond the necessary exchanges about maintenance issues or lease terms. When the water heater died, I had it replaced and split the cost with him as outlined in the lease. When he asked if he could paint the kitchen, I approved the color and told him to hire a professional or I'd deduct it from his security deposit if the job was sloppy. I was a fair landlord, if not a warm one. By the book. Professional. Distant. Rachel thought I should talk to a therapist about it. You're holding on to a lot of pain, Tyler. Maybe it's time to process it with someone who can help. I'm fine. You're functional. That's not the same as fine. She was probably right, but I wasn't ready to unpack it all yet. The therapy would come later, years down the line, when I'd wake up at 3 a.m. thinking about that night with the shredded models and realize I was still carrying the weight of it around like stones in my pockets. For now, I focused on work. Philip promoted me to partner, a move that shocked the rest of the office but felt inevitable to me. I'd earned it through late nights and successful projects, through clients who specifically requested me because they trusted my vision. The partnership came with a significant raise and a stake in the firm's future. You've got good instincts, Philip told me over drinks the night we announced the promotion. Not just about buildings, but about people. You know when to push and when to back off. That's rare. Learned it from watching bad examples. He laughed, low and knowing. The best teachers are often the worst people. Doesn't make the lessons less valuable. A year after I bought the house, Melissa showed up at my office unannounced. My assistant tried to stop her, but she pushed past and stood in my doorway looking defiant and desperate in equal measure. We need to talk. I'm working. Tyler, please. 5 minutes. I gestured to the chair across from my desk. She sat down, folding and refolding her hands in her lap. She'd cut her hair short, dyed it darker. Lost more weight. Whatever life she was living now, it wasn't an easy one. I got a job, she said. In Seattle. Tech company, decent pay. I'm moving next month. Congratulations. I wanted to apologize before I left. For the thesis. For everything. I was young and stupid and cruel, and I'm sorry. I studied her face, looking for sincerity, for manipulation, for anything that would tell me what she really wanted. but all I saw was exhaustion and regret, as genuine as anything I'd seen from her. "Okay," I said. "That's it? Just okay? What do you want me to say, Melissa? That I forgive you? That we can be siblings again and pretend the last decade didn't happen? I want you to give me something. Some acknowledgement that you heard me. That it matters. I heard you. It matters. But it doesn't change anything. You're moving to Seattle. I'm here. Dad's in the house I own, paying rent. We all keep moving forward." She stood up, her movements sharp with frustration. "I destroyed your thesis because I was jealous. You were always the smart one, the talented one, and I was the screw-up. Dad loved you more and I hated you for it. So when I saw all your work sitting there, I wanted to hurt you the way I hurt all the time. It was petty and horrible and I've regretted it every day since." The confession sat between us, raw and uncomfortable. Part of me wanted to accept it, to let it be enough. But another part, harder and more honest, couldn't quite get there. "Dad didn't love me more," I said quietly. "He just had higher expectations. That's not the same thing. And if you were hurting, you should have found better ways to deal with it than destroying other people's work." "I know. I know that now. I'm trying to be better." "Then be better. In Seattle. With people who don't know the worst version of you. Build something new." She left without saying goodbye, and I watched her go with something between relief and sadness. Maybe we'd talk again someday. Maybe we wouldn't. Either way, we'd both survive. Update 2. 5 years passed. The house stayed rented to Dad, who paid on time and kept to himself. He dated a woman named Carol for a while, a widow from his church, but it didn't work out. Got a part-time job at a hardware store to supplement his pension and make the rent easier. Lived a quiet life that looked nothing like the one he'd imagined for himself. I got married to Rachel in a small ceremony at a vineyard upstate. Melissa sent a card from Seattle but didn't attend. Mom came, flew out from Oregon with Dale, and cried through the entire ceremony. Afterward, she hugged me tight and whispered, "I'm proud of you. For building this. For being happy. Thanks, Mom. Your father should be here. He was invited. He chose not to come." She pulled back and looked at me with those sad eyes I remembered from childhood. "You two need to find your way past this. Maybe. Someday." But that day wasn't coming anytime soon, and we both knew it. Philip retired when I was 38, selling his stake in the firm to me and the other partners at a price so generous I suspected he'd taken a loss. "I'm old," he said when I tried to argue about the valuation. "I've got enough money. What I need is to see the firm in good hands, and you've got the best hands I know." The firm became mine in all the ways that mattered. My name on the door, my vision driving our projects, my reputation bringing in clients who wanted innovative design married to practical execution. We grew. Hired more staff. Took on bigger projects. Won awards. I was successful by every metric that mattered to the outside world, and most days, that felt like enough. Then one afternoon, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Tyler? It's Carol. Your dad's friend." My stomach dropped. "Is he okay?" "He had a heart attack. He's at Memorial Hospital. They're saying it's serious." I was in my car before I'd fully processed what she'd said, driving faster than I should have, mind racing through possibilities and outcomes I didn't want to consider. Rachel met me at the hospital. I must have called her, though I didn't remember doing it, and we found Dad's room in the cardiac unit. He looked small in the hospital bed, hooked up to machines that beeped and monitored his vital signs. Carol sat in the corner, a magazine in her lap she wasn't reading. She stood when we entered. "They're saying he needs bypass surgery. Multiple blockages. If he'd waited another day, he probably wouldn't have made it." I nodded, unable to form words. Rachel squeezed my hand. Dad's eyes opened, found me standing there, and something passed across his face. Surprise, maybe. Or relief. "You came." Carol called. "Didn't think you would." I pulled a chair closer to the bed and sat down. His hand lay on top of the blanket, spotted with age and 4 bruises. I didn't take it, but I didn't leave either. "You're my father," I said simply. "Where else would I be?" He closed his eyes, and a tear leaked out. "I'm sorry. For the thesis. For laughing. For all of it. I was a bad father. I know that now." "Yeah. You were. Can you forgive me?" I sat there for a long moment, looking at this man who'd shaped so much of my life, for better and worse, and tried to find an honest answer. "I don't know. Maybe eventually. But right now, let's just focus on getting you through surgery." He nodded, exhausted. "Fair enough." The surgery took 6 hours. Rachel and I sat in the waiting room with Carol, drinking terrible coffee and making small talk about nothing important. Melissa called halfway through. Carol must have contacted her, and I gave her updates when the surgeon came out with progress reports. "He came through," the surgeon said finally. 4 bypasses. He'll need extensive cardiac rehab, lifestyle changes, monitoring. But he should recover fully if he follows the protocol. Relief hit me like a wave, unexpected and overwhelming. I thanked the surgeon and called Melissa with the update. She was crying, thanking me for being there, for calling her, for not abandoning him despite everything. He's still my dad, I said. That doesn't mean we're okay. But I wasn't going to let him die alone. Dad spent 2 weeks in the hospital, then moved to a rehab facility for another month. I visited 3 times a week, sat with him during physical therapy, helped him understand the dietary restrictions and medication schedule. We didn't talk about the past. We talked about his recovery, about the house, about small safe things that didn't require us to confront the wounds we'd inflicted on each other. When he was finally cleared to go home, I drove him there myself. Helped him up the front steps, got him settled on the couch. Carol had stocked the kitchen with heart-healthy foods and left instructions for meal prep. "Thank you," Dad said as I was getting ready to leave. "For everything. You didn't have to help." "I know." "Why did you?" I thought about that question, about all the answers I could give. "Because you're my father. Because I'm a better person than you taught me to be. Because Rachel would have been disappointed if I didn't." All of those were true. But the truest answer was simpler. Because I needed to prove to myself that I could. That I'm capable of helping someone even when they don't deserve it. Even when it hurts. He nodded slowly. "I'm going to do better. Be better. Starting now." "Good. You've got a lot of years to make up for." Over the next year, Dad transformed. Lost 30 pounds through diet and exercise. Quit the part-time job when it became clear the stress wasn't helping his recovery. Started volunteering at a community center, teaching woodworking to kids. We had dinner once a month, awkward at first, then gradually more comfortable. The wounds didn't heal so much as scar over, visible but no longer bleeding. Melissa moved back from Seattle after a bad breakup, got an apartment downtown, started attending family dinners. She and I would never be close, but we found a kind of détente, a mutual understanding that we'd both been damaged by our childhood and were doing our best to move forward. On the 10th anniversary of buying the house, I did something I'd been considering for a while. I called Dad and asked him to meet me there. He showed up looking nervous, probably wondering if I was finally going to evict him or raise the rent to something unmanageable. Instead, I handed him an envelope. "Open it." Inside was the deed to the house, freshly transferred back into his name. His hands shook as he read it. "I don't understand." "It's yours again. Free and clear. No mortgage, no liens, no conditions. Just yours." "Tyler, I can't accept this. This house is worth. I know what it's worth. I also know what it cost you to lose it. And what it cost me to buy it. We're even now. Both of us learned lessons we needed to learn. Now you can stop paying rent and actually enjoy retirement." He sat down heavily on the couch, the deed still in his hands. "Why?" "Because you did better. You kept your word about changing. You earned it back. I don't deserve this. Probably not. But I'm giving it to you anyway. That's what grace looks like, Dad. Giving someone something they don't deserve because you've decided mercy matters more than justice." He cried then, really cried, in a way I'd never seen him do before. I sat next to him and let him, not offering comfort but not leaving either. When he finally composed himself, he looked at me with red eyes and said, "I love you, son. I should have said that more when you were growing up. Should have shown it better. But I love you. I know. I love you too. Even when I didn't like you very much." We sat there in that house, in the living room where my thesis had been destroyed and where my childhood had been both wonderful and terrible, and something between us finally settled into place. Not forgiveness exactly, and definitely not forgetting. But acceptance. Understanding. Peace. Rachel was waiting for me when I got home that evening. "You gave him the house back?" "I did." "How do you feel?" I thought about it, really considered the question. "Lighter. Like I've been carrying something heavy for 10 years and finally set it down." She kissed me, soft and sweet. "I'm proud of you." "For what?" "I bought a house, charged my father rent, then gave it back. Not exactly heroic. For surviving your childhood with your humanity intact. For learning to be kind even when you were taught cruelty. For choosing grace when you could have chosen revenge. That's heroic enough. Sometimes the greatest revenge isn't about taking from the people who hurt you, it's about refusing to let their pain become yours. I could have kept Dad as my tenant forever, could have enjoyed the power dynamic that put me on top and him beneath. But that would have made me into the kind of person he'd been, someone who valued control over compassion. Instead, I chose to be different. To teach what healthy boundaries look like, what consequences and redemption look like when they're balanced correctly. The house was never really about real estate. It was about proving to myself that I could hold someone accountable without becoming cruel, that I could demand better from my family while still leaving room for them to grow. That's the lesson I hope anyone reading this takes away. You don't have to let people who hurt you continue hurting you, but you also don't have to become them. Choose grace when you can. Choose boundaries when you must. Choose to build something better than what you were given.